Michael wiped down the bar counter for the 100th time that evening, his rag moving in practice circles over the gleaming surface. The cacophony of alien languages and laughter swirled around him, a constant reminder of his place in this cosmic melting pot. The Earth orbital station's most popular watering hole, the event horizon, was packed as usual. He glanced up at the dome-shaped ceiling where the blue marble of Earth hung suspended against a backdrop of twinkling stars. It was a view that still took his breath away, even after 3 years of slinging drinks in this tin can. "Hey, Earthling," a gruff voice called out. Another round of Relian firewater. Michael turned to face a table of boisterous Arcturians, their tentacles waving excitedly. "Coming right up, gentlemen," he replied with a practiced smile. As he poured the glowing blue liquid into shot glasses, he couldn't help but wonder how he'd ended up here. Once upon a time, he'd dreamed of exploring the stars. Now he was lucky if he could afford the shuttle fare back to Earth for a visit. The irony wasn't lost on him as he delivered the drinks. A commotion near the entrance caught his attention. The crowd parted, revealing a tall, statuesque figure that seemed to command the room's attention without effort. She was clearly not human. Her skin was a deep, mesmerizing shade of violet, smooth and flawless. But it was her eyes that truly captivated. They literally glowed, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to shift between shades of silver and lavender. Michael found himself staring along with every other patron in the bar. The alien woman glided towards the counter, her movements fluid and graceful. As she approached, he noticed the intricate patterns etched into her skin, swirling designs that seemed to shimmer as she moved. "Good evening," she said, her voice carrying a melodic lilt that sent a shiver down Michael's spine. "I'm in need of a particular service. I was told you might be able to assist me." Michael blinked, forcing himself to focus. Sure, what can I get you?" "We've got drinks from pretty much every corner of the galaxy." The woman's lips curved into an enigmatic smile. "I'm not here for a drink, Michael." He started at the use of his name. "How did you—" "I make it a point to know things," she interrupted smoothly. "My name is Lyra, and I have a proposition for you." Michael's eyes narrowed. In his experience, propositions from mysterious aliens rarely ended well. "Look, I don't know what you've heard, but I'm just a bartender. Whatever you're selling, I'm not interested." Lyra leaned in closer, her glowing eyes intense. "What if I told you I could solve all your financial problems with a single job?" Despite himself, Michael felt a flicker of interest. He thought of his mounting debts, the dream of owning his own ship slipping further away with each passing day. "I'm listening," he said cautiously. Michael bristled at her blunt assessment, but he couldn't deny the truth of it. "And if I say no, then I'll find someone else," Lyra shrugged. "But I doubt you'll get an opportunity like this again." The rational part of Michael's brain screamed at him to walk away, but a smaller, more reckless voice whispered of adventure, of possibilities. Before he could second-guess himself, he heard himself say, "All right, I'm in." Lyra's face lit up with a dazzling smile. "Excellent. We leave in an hour. I suggest you inform your employer and gather any essentials." "An hour," Michael sputtered. "But I can't just—" "You can and you will," Lyra cut him off. "Your time is of the essence. I'll explain everything once we're underway with that." She turned and glided back towards the exit, leaving Michael to wonder what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. An hour later, Michael found himself aboard a sleek private spacecraft unlike anything he'd ever seen. The interior gleamed with otherworldly sophistication that made him acutely aware of his shabby bartender's uniform. Lyra sat across from him, her posture perfect, hands folded neatly in her lap. "I suppose you have questions," she said. Michael barked out a laugh. "That's an understatement. Let's start with who you really are and why you need a fake husband." Lyra's luminous eyes studied him for a moment before she spoke. "I am Princess Lyra of the Zon Empire. Our civilization spans dozens of star systems, and we've long been a stabilizing force in this sector of the galaxy." Michael's jaw dropped. "Your royalty indeed," Lyra nodded. "And therein lies the problem. By ancient tradition, I must marry someone from another species to ascend to the throne. It's meant to foster diplomatic ties and genetic diversity." "Okay," Michael said slowly, trying to process this information. "But why the deception? Can't you just pick someone?" Lyra's expression hardened. "Politics is never that simple. There are factions within the Empire who would use my choice to further their own agendas. A political marriage could upset the delicate balance of power, so you're circumventing the system, Michael realized. Precisely. Lyra's lips quirked into a small smile. By presenting you as my chosen consort at this reception, I buy myself time and throw my opponents off balance. Once I've secured my position, I can reveal the truth and deal with the consequences from a place of strength. Michael leaned back, his mind reeling. And where do I fit into all this? After the reception, I mean, you'll be handsomely compensated and free to go your own way, Lyra assured him. Though I may call upon you again if the need arises. A thought struck Michael. Wait, won't people be suspicious when they realize I know nothing about Zon culture? Lyra's eyes gleamed with approval. A fair point, which is why you'll be undergoing an intensive crash course in our customs and etiquette over the next few days, Michael echoed. I thought this was a one-night thing. The reception is in 5 days, Lyra explained. We'll use that time to prepare you for your role. I hope that won't be a problem. Michael thought of the dingy apartment and the mountain of bills he'd left behind. No, he said firmly. No problem at all. The next few days passed in a blur of information and training. Michael's head spun with Zon history, court protocols, and the intricacies of alien body language. Lyra proved to be a demanding but effective teacher, drilling him relentlessly. No, she sighed, exasperated. The formal greeting is performed with the left hand, not the right. In our culture, that's practically a declaration of war. Michael groaned, flexing his cramped fingers. How do you keep track of all this? Years of training, Lyra replied dryly. Now, again, as exhausting as the lessons were, Michael found himself oddly enjoying Lyra's company. Beneath her regal exterior, he caught glimpses of a sharp wit and genuine passion for her people. He began to understand why she was willing to go to such lengths to protect them. For her part, Lyra seemed to relax slightly in his presence as the days wore on. Her smiles came more readily, and she even laughed at some of his terrible jokes. On the 4th night, as they sat reviewing diplomatic protocols over a late dinner, Michael worked up the courage to ask a question that had been nagging at him. Lyra, he began hesitantly, why did you really choose me for this? There must have been more qualified candidates. Lyra set down her fork, her glowing eyes meeting his. You want the truth? Michael nodded. Very well, she took a deep breath. I chose you because, in all my observations of your species, you were the first human I've met who looked at the stars with genuine wonder. Most see only resources to be exploited or territories to be conquered. But you see the beauty in it all. Michael felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. Thank you, he managed. Lyra's expression softened. It's a rare quality, Michael. One I admire greatly. For a moment, the air between them seemed charged with an unspoken tension. Then, Lyra cleared her throat, the moment passing. We should rest, she said briskly. Tomorrow is the big day. As Michael lay in his bunk that night, he found sleep elusive. Lyra's words echoed in his mind, along with the memory of her luminous eyes. He told himself it was just nerves about the upcoming reception, but a small voice in the back of his head whispered that he was in danger of forgetting this was all just an act. The day of the reception dawned, and Michael found himself aboard a massive luxury starliner that made his old bar look like a backwater dive. Aliens of every conceivable shape and size mingled in opulent surroundings, the air thick with a babble of languages. He tugged uncomfortably at the high collar of his formal Zayan attire, acutely aware of the curious stares directed his way. Lyra stood beside him, resplendent in a gown that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Remember, she murmured, you are Miles, my chosen consort. You were a diplomat on a distant human colony before we met. Stick to that story, and let me handle any complicated questions. Michael nodded, his mouth dry. Right, easy. Just act natural around a bunch of alien dignitaries who could probably have me vaporized with a snap of their fingers. Lyra's hand found his, giving it a reassuring squeeze. You'll do fine, just be yourself. That's why I chose you after all. Before Michael could respond, a loud chime rang out, signaling the start of the reception. Lyra straightened, her face settling into a mask of regal poise. Showtime, she whispered as they stepped forward to greet the assembled galactic elite. Michael took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, he had a feeling his life would never be the same. Michael stepped into the grand reception hall of the luxury space liner, his arm linked with Lyra's. The opulence struck him like a physical force. Crystalline chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting prismatic light across a sea of alien dignitaries in their finest attire. The air thrummed with a cacophony of languages and the clink of expensive glassware. "Breathe," Lyra whispered, her lips barely moving. "You look like you're about to bolt." Michael forced air into his lungs. "Sorry," he murmured back. "It's just a lot." "Focus on me," Lyra instructed, her grip tightening slightly. "We've got this." As they moved deeper into the crowd, Michael found himself thrust into a whirlwind of introductions and small talk. He clung to his fabricated backstory like a lifeline, grateful for the hours of preparation Lyra had drilled into him. "Ah," the princess and her human consort boomed, a voice that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. A being composed entirely of shimmering energy approached them, its form constantly shifting and reforming. "Ambassador Vex," Lyra greeted warmly. "May I present my chosen?" Michael bowed, desperately trying to recall the proper etiquette for addressing an energy being. "It's an honor, Ambassador." The being pulsed with what Michael hoped was approval. "Fascinating. I've always found humans to be such volatile creatures. Tell me, how did you two meet?" Lyra's hand found Michael's, their fingers intertwining. The gesture felt surprisingly natural. It was quite by chance, actually, she began, launching into their rehearsed story. As Lyra spun their tale of a chance encounter on a distant outpost, Michael found himself watching her with genuine admiration. She commanded the conversation effortlessly, weaving truth and fiction into a seamless narrative that had the ambassador captivated. "And when he stood up to that Krylorian trade delegation, well, I knew I'd found someone special," Lyra finished, gazing up at Michael with convincing adoration. Michael felt heat creep up his neck. "You give me too much credit, my dear," he managed, falling into character. "I simply couldn't bear to see you insulted." Ambassador Vex thrummed with what sounded like approval. "A charming tale. You must be quite the diplomat yourself." Miles before Michael could respond, a new voice cut through the conversation. "Indeed. I'm most curious to hear more about your credentials." Michael turned to find himself face to face with a Zon male whose very presence seemed to drop the temperature of the room by several degrees. His violet skin was several shades darker than Lyra's, etched with intricate patterns that pulsed with barely contained energy. But it was his eyes that sent a chill down Michael's spine, cold and calculating, devoid of the warmth that characterized Lyra's gaze. Varrock, Lyra's voice carried a hint of steel beneath its polite exterior. "How lovely to see you." The Zane's lips curled into what might generously be called a smile. "Princess, I must say your choice of consort has caused quite a stir." Michael straightened, drawing on every ounce of diplomatic training Lyra had instilled in him. "Counselor Varrock, I presume." "I've heard much about you." Varrock's eyes narrowed slightly. "All good things, I hope." "Naturally," Michael replied smoothly, even as warning bells sounded in his head. This was clearly not a being to be trifled with. As the evening wore on, Michael found himself settling into his role with increasing ease. He and Lyra moved through the crowd as a unit, their touches and glances becoming more natural with each passing hour. But beneath the veneer of diplomatic pleasantries, Michael's instincts screamed that something was off. It was during a lull in the festivities that he noticed it. Lyra had excused herself moments earlier, citing a need to powder her nose, a human euphemism she'd picked up from him. But as Michael's eyes swept the room, he caught a glimpse of her violet form slipping through a side door, followed closely by a hooded figure he didn't recognize. Curiosity and a nagging sense of unease propelled Michael into motion. He made his way casually toward the door, careful not to draw attention. As he neared, he could hear the faint murmur of voices from the other side. "We're running out of time," a gruff, unfamiliar voice was saying. "If we don't act soon, I'm well aware of the stakes," Lyra's voice replied, tight with tension. "But we can't rush this. One false move and everything falls apart." Michael leaned closer, straining to hear more when a hand clamped down on his shoulder. He whirled, coming face to face with Varrock's cold stare. "Eavesdropping," Miles the Zon's voice dripped with false concern. "Not very becoming of a diplomat, is it?" Michael's mind raced. I was just looking for the restroom, he lied smoothly. This ship's layout is quite confusing. Varrok's eyes narrowed. Indeed. Well, allow me to escort you. We wouldn't want you getting lost now, would we? As Varrok steered him away from the door, Michael caught one last snippet of Lyra's conversation. The assassination attempt. We have to assume they'll try again. Michael's blood ran cold. What had he stumbled into? When he and Lyra finally retired to their quarters, he could contain himself no longer. What's really going on, Lyra? He demanded as soon as the doors sealed behind them. Assassination attempts? Secret meetings? This is way more than just political maneuvering, isn't it? Lyra's shoulders sagged, the regal mask slipping away to reveal genuine exhaustion. You weren't supposed to find out like this, she said quietly. Find out what? Michael pressed. Lyra, if I'm in danger here, I deserve to know. She met his gaze, her luminous eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. You're right, you do deserve the truth. Lyra took a deep breath before continuing. I'm investigating a conspiracy against the royal family. There's a faction within the empire that wants to overthrow the current system and install a military dictatorship. They see our traditions of interspecies cooperation as a weakness. Michael's mind reeled. And your marriage tradition? Lyra nodded grimly. By choosing a human consort, I'm making a statement reaffirming our commitment to galactic cooperation. It's why they're so desperate to stop me from taking the throne. How can I help? Michael asked without hesitation. Lyra looked at him in surprise. You don't have to do this, Michael. This isn't what you signed up for. Michael smiled wryly. Maybe not, but I'm in now. Besides, I've got some experience you might find useful. Lyra's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Michael took a deep breath. It was his turn for confessions. Before I was a bartender, I was a soldier. Lyra's eyes widened. Why didn't you tell me? It's not exactly something I'm proud of, Michael admitted. I left that life behind for a reason. But if it can help keep you safe. The next day, they decided to take a walk along the ship's observation deck to clear their heads and discuss their next move. As they strolled, admiring the vast expanse of stars beyond the reinforced windows, Michael noticed a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. Get down, he shouted, tackling Lyra to the ground just as a volley of energy bolts sizzled through the air where they had been standing. Without thinking, Michael rolled to his feet, grabbing a nearby fire extinguisher. He hurled it at the nearest attacker with deadly accuracy, buying them precious seconds. Lyra stared at him in shock. Where did you learn to? To do that, Michael grimaced as he pulled her behind cover. Remember how I said I used to tend bar? Well, before that I was a soldier. Special operations. You're full of surprises, Lyra remarked, producing a small energy weapon from somewhere in her gown. What followed was a chaotic blur of light and sound. Michael and Lyra fought back to back, a deadly dance of precision and power. He was impressed by her combat skills. Clearly, the princess was more than just a political figurehead. As the last attacker fell, Lyra turned to Michael, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and concern. We need to get off the ship. If they've infiltrated security to this extent, nowhere here is safe. Michael nodded grimly. Agreed, but where can we go? Lyra's expression hardened with resolve. My home. We need to warn my family about the coup. But Michael, you should know if we do this, our ruse will be exposed. There's no going back. Michael took her hand, squeezing it gently. Lyra, I'm way past caring about the money or the act. I'm with you whatever comes next. For a moment, the air between them seemed charged with an unspoken tension. Lyra's luminous eyes searched his face, as if seeing him truly for the first time. Michael, she began, but the words were cut off by the shriek of alarms. Intruder alert. All security personnel to level 3. A computerized voice blared over the ship's speakers. We need to move, Michael said urgently, already pulling Lyra towards the nearest exit. As they raced through the ship's corridors, dodging panicked passengers and crew members, Michael's mind whirled. How had things escalated so quickly? And more importantly, how were they going to get out of this alive? They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of heavily armed security officers. For a split second, Michael felt relief until he saw the cold determination in their eyes. There they are, one of the officers shouted. Take them down. Michael's combat instincts took over. He shoved Lyra behind him, scanning the area for any advantage. "Run," he yelled, grabbing a decorative vase and hurling it at the approaching guards. The ensuing chaos gave Lyra just enough time to slip away as Michael engaged the guards, buying her precious seconds to escape. He caught one last glimpse of her violet form disappearing down a side corridor, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and something else, something he wasn't quite ready to name. All he knew was that he had to find her again, no matter the cost. As energy bolts sizzled past his head, Michael steeled himself for the fight ahead. Whatever came next, he was all in. Michael's head throbbed as consciousness slowly returned. He blinked, trying to focus on his surroundings. The stark white walls of a medical bay came into view, along with the steady beep of monitoring equipment. "He's awake," a voice announced. Michael struggled to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through his body. "Lyra," he croaked, his throat dry. Where's Lyra? Zahn, medical officer, appeared in his field of vision, her expression grave. "I'm sorry, sir." Princess Lyra was taken. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. Memories flooded back. The firefight, Lyra disappearing down the corridor, his desperate stand against the security team. He had failed her. "How long have I been out?" Michael demanded, swinging his legs over the side of the bed despite the doctor's protests. "Nearly 48 hours, she replied. "You sustained severe injuries. You need to rest." Michael cut her off. "I need to find Lyra." "Who's in charge of the investigation?" The doctor hesitated before answering. "There is no official investigation, sir. The royal family has declared the princess missing, but there are rumors of a cover-up." Michael's jaw clenched. Of course. If Varrock's conspiracy reached as high as Lyra had feared, they'd want to keep this quiet. He was on his own. "I need my personal effects," Michael said, his voice leaving no room for argument, and access to a communications terminal within the hour. Michael had discharged himself against medical advice and retreated to his quarters. He paced the room, mind racing. Where would they have taken her? Who could he trust? A chime from the door interrupted his thoughts. Michael tensed, hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Who is it?" he called out. "A friend," came the reply. The door slid open to reveal Ambassador Vex, the energy being's form pulsing with agitation. Michael relaxed slightly. "Ambassador, I wasn't expecting visitors." "These are unexpected times," Vex replied, gliding into the room. "I've come to offer my assistance." Michael's eyes narrowed. "Why should I trust you?" Vex's form flickered, a gesture Michael had come to recognize as amusement. "Because, my dear Miles, I am far older and wiser than I let on. I've watched empires rise and fall, and I have no desire to see the Zahn Empire topple to fascists and warmongers." For a long moment, Michael studied the enigmatic being. Finally, he nodded. "All right. What can you tell me?" "My contacts have traced an unauthorized shuttle launch shortly after the attack," Vex explained. "Its trajectory suggests it was headed for Nyx, a desolate moon in a nearby system." Michael's pulse quickened. "That has to be where they've taken her." "I need a ship already arranged," Vex hummed, "along with some equipment you might find useful. Former special operations, wasn't it?" Despite everything, Michael couldn't help but smile. "You really do know everything, don't you?" "I make it my business to," Vex replied. "Now, we don't have much time. Are you ready to stage a rescue, Miles?" Michael's expression hardened with determination. "Let's bring her home." Lyra paced the confines of her cell, frustration and worry etched on her features. The bare metal walls offered no clues to her location, and the energy field blocking the entrance hummed with lethal potential. The sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze. Lyra squared her shoulders, lifting her chin defiantly as a familiar figure appeared on the other side of the barrier. "Varrock," she spat. "I should have known you were behind this." The Zahn counselor's lips curled into a cold smile. "Princess, I trust your accommodations are adequate." "Cut the pleasantries," Lyra snapped. "What do you want?" Varrock's eyes gleamed with a fanatical light. "What I've always wanted, my dear, a strong Zahn Empire, free from the shackles of your family's weak leadership, and you think kidnapping me will accomplish that?" Lyra scoffed. "Oh, it's merely the first step," Varrock replied. You see, your disappearance has thrown the palace into chaos. Your parents are desperate, vulnerable. They'll agree to anything to get you back safely. Lyra's blood ran cold as the implications sank in. You're going to use me as leverage to seize power. Varrock nodded, his expression triumphant. By the time this is over, the Empire will have the strong leadership it deserves. No more pandering to lesser species. No more wasteful diplomatic niceties. We will take our rightful place as rulers of the galaxy. You're insane, Lyra breathed. The people will never accept this. The people will do as they're told, Varrock snarled, his composure slipping for a moment. Those who resist will be dealt with. Lyra lunged forward, stopped short by the crackling energy field. I'll never help you, Varrock. I'll die first. The Zayn's expression hardened. That can be arranged, princess, but not before you've served your purpose. With that, he turned and strode away, leaving Lyra alone with her racing thoughts and growing dread. The sleek shuttle cut through the inky blackness of space, its stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible to sensors. In the pilot's seat, Michael's hands flew over the controls with practiced ease. Approaching Nyx, he announced, more to himself than his non-corporeal passenger. Any last-minute intel? Ambassador Vex's energy form coalesced beside him. My scans detect a hidden facility beneath the moon's surface, heavily shielded, but I'm picking up Zon life signs. Michael nodded grimly. That's got to be where they're holding her. Any idea on defenses? Difficult to say, Vex hummed, but I'd wager on a small army of mercenaries, automated security systems, and enough firepower to level a small city. Fantastic, Michael muttered. He began the descent towards Nyx's barren, crater-pocked surface. You know, for an ambassador, you seem awfully well informed about covert ops. Vex's form flickered with amusement. I've lived a very long time, my boy. You pick up a few things along the way. As they neared the coordinates of the hidden base, Michael activated the shuttle's cloaking device. He set the ship down in a secluded ravine, out of sight of any potential patrols. This is where we part ways, Ambassador Michael said, checking his weapons one last time. I appreciate the help, but I can't ask you to risk yourself further. Nonsense, Vex replied. I may not be much use in a firefight, but I can certainly run interference on their security systems. Besides, if someone needs to fly the getaway ship, Michael couldn't help but smile. All right then. Let's go rescue a princess. Lyra's fingers worked frantically at the control panel of her cell, searching for any weakness in the energy field. She had lost track of how long she'd been imprisoned, but each passing moment increased the danger to her family and her people. A commotion in the corridor outside made her pause, the sounds of a scuffle followed by a muffled thud. Lyra's heart raced. Could it be? The energy field flickered and died. In its place stood Michael, looking battered but very much alive. Sorry I'm late, he said with a lopsided grin. Traffic was murder. Lyra laughed despite her self-relief washing over her. Michael, how did you find me? Long story, he replied, tossing her a spare blaster. Short version? I had help from an old energy being. Now what do you say we get out of here? As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Lyra's expression hardened. We need to stop Varrock. He's planning a coup, using me as leverage against my family. Michael nodded. Then we take him down together. They moved swiftly through the corridors, Michael's military training complementing Lyra's knowledge of Zon tactics. They encountered pockets of resistance, mercenaries and security drones, but dispatched them efficiently. We make a good team, Lyra remarked as they paused to catch their breath. Michael met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them. Yeah, he said softly. We do. The moment was shattered by a booming voice over the facility speakers. I must admit, I'm impressed. Varrock's voice dripped with contempt. You've made it further than I anticipated. But your little rescue attempt ends here. Blast doors slammed shut around them, sealing off their escape routes. From hidden panels in the walls emerged a small army of combat droids, their weapons trained on Michael and Lyra. Now then, Varrock continued, surrender, and I might be persuaded to make your deaths quick and painless. Michael and Lyra exchanged a look. Without a word, they moved in perfect synchronization. Lyra dropped low, providing covering fire as Michael vaulted over her, taking out the nearest droid with a well-placed shot. What followed was a symphony of destruction. Michael's special ops training came flooding back, muscle memory taking over as he weaved through the onslaught. Lyra was a force of nature, her natural Zon abilities amplifying her combat prowess. They fought back to back, a whirlwind of energy bolts in hand-to-hand combat. Michael marveled at how in tune they were, anticipating each other's moves without needing to communicate. As the last droid fell, sparking and twitching, Lyra turned to Michael. "We need to get to the control room, cut off Varrock's escape routes." Michael nodded, slightly out of breath. "Lead the way, Your Highness." They fought their way through the facility, leaving a trail of disabled security systems and unconscious mercenaries in their wake. Finally, they reached a heavily fortified door, the entrance to the control room. "Allow me," Michael said with a grin. He pulled a small device from his belt courtesy of Vex's equipment and attached it to the door's locking mechanism. Within seconds, the massive door slid open. They burst into the control room, weapons at the ready. Varrock stood at the far end, surrounded by banks of monitors and holographic displays. His violet skin was flushed dark with rage. "It's over," Varrock Lyra declared. "Surrender now, and you might avoid execution for treason." The Zon counselor's lips curled into a sneer. "You naive fool. Did you really think I'd make it this easy with blinding speed?" Varrock produced a weapon unlike anything Michael had ever seen. It hummed with an otherworldly energy that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Behold," Varrock crowed, "the fruits of our weapons research technology beyond your wildest dreams, fueled by energies you can't begin to comprehend." He fired, and the world exploded into chaos. Michael dove for cover, pulling Lyra with him as reality itself seemed to warp and twist around them. "What the hell is that thing?" Michael shouted over the din. Lyra's eyes were wide with horror. "It's drawing power from subspace. If he overloads it, he could tear a hole in the fabric of space-time." Michael's mind raced. They needed a plan fast. He caught Lyra's eye, an idea forming. With a series of quick hand signals, a mix of special ops gestures, and the Zon battle language Lyra had taught him, he outlined his strategy. Lyra nodded, understanding perfectly. They moved as one, Lyra providing a distraction with suppressing fire while Michael circled around, using the warped gravity fields to his advantage. Varrock, drunk on his newfound power, failed to notice Michael's approach until it was too late. The former soldier tackled him, sending them both crashing into a bank of controls. The weapon skittered across the floor, its energy building to a critical level. "Lyra," Michael yelled, "the weapon." Without hesitation, Lyra scooped up the pulsing device. Using her natural Zon affinity for energy manipulation, she focused on containing the volatile forces within. Sweat beaded on her brow as she fought to stabilize the weapon. Meanwhile, Michael grappled with Varrock. The Zon was stronger, but Michael's combat experience gave him an edge. They traded blows, neither able to gain the upper hand. "Why?" Michael grunted, dodging a vicious strike. "Why betray everything your people stand for?" Varrock's eyes blazed with fanatic zeal. "Because we are meant for greatness. The Zon Empire should rule the stars, not coddle lesser species like your pathetic human race." "You're wrong," Michael shot back. "True strength comes from unity, from embracing our differences. Lyra showed me that." With a surge of strength, Michael pinned Varrock against the wall. "It's over," he said firmly. "You've lost." For a moment, it seemed Varrock might surrender. Then, with a snarl of rage, he activated a hidden control on his wrist. Klaxons blared as a computerized voice announced, "Self-destruct sequence initiated." 5 minutes to detonation. Michael's eyes widened in shock. Taking advantage of his distraction, Varrock broke free and sprinted for an emergency escape pod. "Michael," Lyra called out. She had managed to stabilize the weapon, but exhaustion was clear on her features. "We need to go. Now." He hesitated for a split second, torn between pursuing Varrock and ensuring Lyra's safety. In the end, there was no real choice. They raced through the crumbling facility, the countdown echoing in their ears. They reached the hangar bay with less than a minute to spare, diving into the waiting shuttle where Vex's energy form pulsed with anxiety. "Cutting it rather close, aren't we?" the ambassador remarked as Michael took the controls. The shuttle blasted out of the hangar, accelerating hard. Behind them, the hidden moon base erupted in a cataclysmic explosion that lit up the dark side of Nyx. As they escaped the blast radius, Lyra slumped in her seat, the adrenaline wearing off. "We did it," she breathed. "It's over." Michael reached out, taking her hand in his. "Yeah," he said softly. "We did." Their eyes met, and in that moment, all the unspoken feelings between them crystallized into something real and tangible. Without a word, they leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that spoke volumes. Vex's form flickered discreetly. "I'll just give you two a moment," the ambassador said, fading from view. As they broke apart, Michael couldn't help but grin. "So what happens now?" "Your Highness." Lyra's expression turned thoughtful. Now we head home. I have a family to confront and an empire to change." The aftermath of their adventure was a whirlwind of political maneuvering and difficult conversations. Lyra presented the evidence of Varrock's conspiracy to the Zahn High Council, exposing the rot that had taken hold in parts of the government. In a move that shocked many, she abdicated her claim to the throne. "I can better serve our people as a diplomat," she explained to her stunned parents. "We need to forge stronger bonds with other species, not isolate ourselves out of fear." As for Michael, he found himself at a crossroads. His old life on Earth seemed a distant memory, yet he wasn't sure where he fit in this new interstellar landscape. It was Lyra who provided the answer. "The Zahn Empire could use an official ambassador from Earth," she suggested with a smile. "Someone who understands both our cultures." And so Michael found himself embarking on a new adventure, this time with Lyra by his side, not as a fake consort, but as a true partner. Their wedding was a celebration that bridged two worlds, elements of Earth and Zahn culture blended seamlessly, a testament to the unity they hoped to foster throughout the galaxy. As they prepared to depart for their first diplomatic mission together, Michael turned to his new wife. "Ready for our next adventure?" he asked. Lyra's eyes sparkled with excitement. "With you?" Always hand in hand, they boarded their ship, ready to face whatever challenges the vast expanse of space might throw their way. They had found something neither had expected: a love that transcended the boundaries of worlds and the strength to forge a better future for all. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says, we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.